Back with the WMAY Morning News Feed. I'm Greg Bishop, 711. You can find me online. Just email me, bishoponair@gmail.com. And when Facebook is up, you can find me there. Just search out Bishop on Air. Apparently, Twitter might survive the apocalypse because they were still up yesterday. So you can find me there as well, Bishop on Air. Just search Bishop on Air and you'll be able to find it. Joining us right now here on the WMAY Morning News Feed, State Representative Blaine Wilhour. He's down in Beecher City. A couple of things to tackle here on the air this morning. Representative, thanks for taking time. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, Greg. Thanks for taking the time with me. And thanks for doing it early in the morning. I got a lot of work to do today.
Well, the show starts at 6 o'clock every morning. So I get a lot of my work done early while everybody else goes on throughout the rest of the day. So I appreciate it. Let's get right into it. Yesterday, the governor was asked about the mask mandates, and he really couldn't give a benchmark as to when we'll have the statewide universal mask mandate lifted inside buildings, even for those who are vaccinated, let alone the school mask mandate that's still in place per his order. We're one of 11 states with a universal mask mandate and one of 17 with mask mandates in schools. What's the compliance rate been like down in your area?
As far as the schools go, the compliance rate ever since the governor's really put his heavy hand down inside the schools has been pretty good. There are a few down here that are still holding back on it. And but the thing is, the governor doesn't want to give benchmarks, or he doesn't want to give anything hard and fast, because if you do that, with it comes the necessary transparency and the necessary accountability, and he'd have a real check on his power at that point. And that's something that he hasn't been interested in the last 19 or 20 months, and really, Greg, even if he did, people are to the point, especially in our part of the world, that even if he did put some benchmark in there, people would disregard it, because he would just disregard it if it became more politically expedient for him to just move the benchmark like he's done so many times. I think that down here and across the state, we're more interested in keeping the governor and his unelected bureaucrats in the agency inside the limits of their authority. And until enough people stand up and demand that's going to be pretty tough, because you and I both know the feckless legislature in the state of Illinois in its current composition has been more than happy to just sit on the sidelines and watch this. And our local governments have largely allowed themselves to be threatened and coerced into submission, basically against their will. So it's good to see that a couple of schools locally here on the public side are taking the governor to task throughout the legal process on this.
Well, let's talk about
this week,
that.
Hopefully.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because Friday, Attorney Thomas DeVore, on behalf of 3 public schools, filed a lawsuit against the Illinois State Board of Education about being on probation. This follows Parkview Christian Academy, I believe up in Kendall County, securing an order from a court that said that their recognition status had to be restored immediately after having it immediately revoked by the school, the State Board of Education, for not following mask mandates. But now we have 3 public schools that are suing about their probation status. Tell us about Beecher City. What's the sentiment from that school district?
Yeah, Beecher City is my hometown here. They're one of 3 that are on the lawsuit. It's Beecher City, Cowden Herrick, which is the adjoining school here. They actually have a sports co-op with Beecher City and Red Hill over in Lawrence County. And our thing is down here is that we don't believe that the governor and his agencies have this authority to usurp our local control. And when we believe that the agencies are out of line, as the court system has said in Kendall County, like you said, it's a little bit different for a private school, but it's the same argument. They were still outside of their authority on recognition status. You can't change somebody's recognition status unless they are in clear violation of a law. There is no law for the mask mandate. And, the things that the governor points at in his executive order for his enforcement authority, namely the Emergency Management Agency Act, clearly and specifically has no enforcement mechanisms outside of what's in current statute. So we're sitting here in a situation where our local control has been completely circumvented. These agencies are running completely wild. They're making up rules. I mean, several school districts down here, several individuals have filed lawsuit against these districts on the mask mandate, and they've won using the modified quarantine part of the Public Health Act. And, what do they do again in that situation? They don't go to the legislature to change the law or do anything else. These agencies just change it. They just arbitrarily change it unilaterally. That's not how our system works. And it's a very, very responsible thing what these districts that are standing up are doing, because we're setting a major precedent for how things are handled moving forward. We can't just let these agencies run wild. If you're a local school district and you believe that your authority has been circumvented, like almost every school district in the state of Illinois believes at their core, then it's the right and responsible thing to do to go through the proper legal process, which they are doing. That's why we have the three branches of government. Like I said, the legislative branch has been completely worthless. The executive branch is out of control. So our only recourse is the judicial branch. And, and what that's going to do is that's going to provide clarity on the law one way or another. We need clarity, and it's a responsible thing that these districts are pursuing that avenue. And I support them 100%.
We're talking with State Representative Blaine Wilhour here on the WMAY morning news feed at 7:18. And Representative, you talked about the lack of action in the legislature. We've seen, 650 plus bills, a massive energy proposal brought forward, two different measures for maps. Those are pretty complicated. You've got congressional maps that are coming up for the fall veto session. Do you anticipate anything along the lines of dealing with these orders, or dealing with, for instance, the Healthcare Right of Conscience Act? What are you hearing is going to be brought up other than congressional maps for fall veto session?
Well, we've definitely heard some things about the Healthcare Right of Conscience Act. Again, that's a legal statute that's been put in place, and the people are effectively using to some extent, especially teachers and folks like that, to assert their individual liberty, their statutory individual liberty. So anytime that these agencies their unilateral power comes under threat, they just go try to change things. And, that's not really how this thing's supposed to work, but at least I guess they'll maybe go through the legislature on that one. But, you talk about the energy bill, and you talk about, a lot of these other big things that happen in Springfield. And I think you can draw a direct line to the things that people prioritize in Springfield are things that the lobbying class, the political class thinks are important, and one of my big things in going to Springfield is regular folks. They need some lobbying. They need some power. They need some clout in Springfield. Too many politicians are bought and paid for by the lobbying class. Look at the energy bill. Every one of the major lobbyists and the special interest groups and everybody else, they got their cut out of that thing, and all the regular taxpayers in the state of Illinois get is to pay for it, over their whole lifetime here. So that is ultimately the biggest problem in Springfield. Nobody speaks for regular folks. These teachers unions and everybody else, they've got a lot of power, but students don't have any. Local school boards don't have any, and that's what we're trying to change, and that's why we're fighting this stuff, for the precedents that it sets for the future. If you allow these agencies to run wild, it'll never stop.
Representative, what about something I heard early in the pandemic, but I haven't really heard much since, even though some Republicans in the State House have filed legislation to address the issue. But it's something that, business leaders and even some in the public sector, like public schools, for instance, may be looking for, and that's liability protection for COVID-19. I mean, this is obviously something that not even, the likes of big government can seem to stem, even with all the various policies they've tried to put into place, right? We saw, upward swings, downward swings, upward swings, downward swings, even with or without mask mandates. Of course, we're on a downward trajectory now, but liability protection, why has that not really been an issue as something that lawmakers are evaluating, even let alone just holding hearings to understand the issue?
Yeah, I mean, that would be helpful if the legislature did weigh in on that. I think, on the U.S. Senate, they were weighing in on it at one point in time, but the power dynamic changed a little bit there. But the thing is, it's pretty hard to be held liable for basically defying something that is not a law. That's ultimately that's what it comes right down to. Can somebody be held personally liable, or a business be held liable for breaking an executive order that has no power of law and has no enforcement behind it? And as far as the COVID-19 stuff goes, it would be completely impossible to prove beyond any doubt that somebody picked up a highly transmissible disease in one location. Never in the history of the world has somebody been sued successfully for contracting a highly transmittable disease in a public space. So the bar is very high on that. That's another thing that a lot of people lean back on as an excuse just to do the easy thing and comply. We've seen all these bars and restaurants down here that asserted their rightful authority, and they remained in business throughout the first several months of the pandemic, and in no situation was anybody able to be held criminally responsible for anything or civilly responsible for anything, because the bar is just so high on that.
So we'll see what happens with that. Real quick here, back to the issue of the public schools that are suing, including one in Beecher City. What I guess I react to those who are saying that all of these tax dollars for schools for COVID relief are tied to mask mandates and possible vaccine mandate or other COVID-19 type policies. Surely you've seen these viral videos of school board hearings, and we heard some of it last night in Springfield. Are you concerned that Beecher City could lose funding if they don't follow these COVID policies?
Well, number one, Beecher City has had a pretty good board for a long time, and they're in a pretty good financial situation as far as a small public school district goes. But I think it's larger than that, Greg. Like I said, it's we're setting precedents for how things are going to be handled in the future and what we're going to allow from these unelected bureaucrats and these agencies that are just putting down their iron fist. They can make some things hard for you. The biggest thing that they can do is hold some funding over your head. But in the long term, I think that we're doing the best thing for the education system in the state of Illinois, which on the public side is completely broken. And these folks need pushback. And I'm just happy that some of these boards had the foresight and the intestinal fortitude to actually do it. And I know that there's a lot of other districts out there that are cheering them on.
We'll keep a close eye on it. State Representative Blaine Wilhour, greatly appreciate you taking the time with us this morning on the WMAY Morning News Feed.
Good to be here, Greg. Thank you.
All right, stay tuned. Much more coming up, including we'll talk